Francis never planned to stay in Black Hollow. The town sat deep inside the forests of northern America, hidden between endless hills and ancient trees. Most maps did not show it. Most people had never heard of it. And those who had heard of it usually spoke about it in strange, uncomfortable ways. Francis was a freelance photographer who traveled from place to place collecting unusual stories. Abandoned hospitals, forgotten roads, ghost towns, anything mysterious attracted him. That was how he first learned about Black Hollow. An old truck driver mentioned the town during a late-night conversation at a roadside diner. The driver looked nervous while speaking. He kept staring through the window into the darkness. Finally, he leaned closer. He told Francis something strange. Every morning, Black Hollow was different. Different houses, different streets, different people. Nobody knew why, nobody talked about it, and nobody ever stayed there for long. Francis laughed. It sounded like another local legend, a story created to entertain travelers. Still, something about the truck driver's face bothered him. The fear looked real. A week later, Francis found himself driving toward Black Hollow. Rain covered the windshield. Dark clouds filled the sky. The deeper he traveled into the forest, the quieter the world became. No birds, no animals, no wind. Only the sound of tires moving across wet pavement. Near sunset, he saw a wooden sign. Black Hollow, population unknown. The word unknown had been carved into the wood by hand. Francis smiled. Someone clearly enjoyed creating mysteries. He drove forward. The town appeared several minutes later. At first, everything looked normal. Roads. Street lamps glowed softly. A grocery store sat near the center. Children rode bicycles. People walked along sidewalks. Nothing seemed unusual. Yet Francis immediately noticed one thing. Everyone stared at him. Every person, every child, every elderly resident. They watched his vehicle pass. No smiles, no greetings, only silent observation. The feeling unsettled him. Francis parked near a small motel. The building looked old but clean. A faded sign read, Hollow Pines Motel. Inside, he found an elderly woman sitting behind the counter. Her gray hair hung over tired eyes. She barely looked at him. "One room, please," said Francis. The woman nodded. "You staying one night? Maybe two." Her face suddenly became serious. "Leave tomorrow." Francis laughed. "Why?" "Because tomorrow will not be the same." The woman handed him a key. "Room 7. Do not go outside after midnight." Francis had heard warnings like this before. Every mysterious town had rules. Every legend had dramatic instructions. He thanked her and carried his bags upstairs. The room was small. A bed, a lamp, a dusty mirror. Nothing unusual. After unpacking, he grabbed his camera and headed outside. Night slowly covered Black Hollow. Streetlights illuminated empty roads. The townspeople had disappeared indoors. Windows were shut, curtains closed, doors locked. The entire town seemed to be preparing for something. Francis photographed buildings and streets. Everything appeared ordinary. Eventually, he reached the town square. There he found a statue. The monument depicted a tall figure wearing a hood. Its face had been intentionally removed. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth stone. At the base of the statue, he discovered hundreds of names carved into the surface. Thousands, perhaps. The list seemed endless. Francis examined them closely. Many names had dates beside them, but the dates made no sense. Some belonged to years that had not happened yet. Others belonged to centuries in the future. A cold sensation moved through him. For the first time, he felt genuine unease. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. A young woman stood nearby. She looked around his age. Her expression was nervous. "You should not be here," she said. Francis lowered his camera. "Tourists are not welcome. I did not see any signs. There never are." "Then why stay?" The woman looked toward the faceless statue. "Because nobody can leave." Francis frowned. "That is impossible." The woman said nothing. Instead, she pointed toward the list of names. find your name tomorrow morning." Before Frances could ask another question, she hurried away. Within seconds, she vanished into darkness. The conversation left him unsettled. Around 11, he returned to the motel. Rain had stopped. The air felt strangely warm. Everything looked normal. Buildings, roads, trees. Nothing supernatural. Near midnight, fatigue finally won. Francis turned off the lamp. Darkness filled the room. At first, everything remained quiet. Then he heard something. Very soft. Very slow. Tap, tap, tap. The sound came from the window. Francis opened his eyes. The knocking continued. Tap, tap, tap. He sat up. Room 7 was on the second floor. Nobody should have been outside the window. Yet the sound persisted. Tap, tap, tap. Francis approached carefully. The curtains blocked his view. For several seconds he stood frozen, listening. The knocking stopped. Silence returned. Francis slowly pulled the curtain aside. Nothing, only darkness. The parking lot below was empty. He exhaled. Probably a branch. Probably the wind. He returned to bed. Minutes later, another sound appeared. Scratching. Long, slow scratching, like fingernails moving across glass. Francis sat upright again. The noise came directly beside his head. The window. Scratch, scratch, scratch. His heartbeat accelerated. This time he grabbed the flashlight. He walked toward the glass. The scratching stopped instantly. Francis looked outside. Nothing. Again, nothing. No person, no animal, no tree branches. Only darkness. Then his flashlight illuminated something. Words. Written on the outside of the window. Fresh letters covered the glass. Letters made from a dark liquid. The message was simple. Do not look outside at 1. Stared in disbelief. His hands trembled. Someone must have written it moments ago. But how? There was no balcony, no ladder, nothing. Suddenly, a distant bell rang. One time, then silence. Francis checked the clock. Exactly 1 in the morning. Immediately, every light in town went dark. Street lamps vanished. Windows darkened. The motel became completely black. Francis felt a wave of fear. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Then he heard it. A sound coming from outside. Heavy footsteps. Slow. Massive. As if something enormous walked through the streets. Thump. Thump. The floor vibrated slightly. Francis moved toward the window. The warning remained visible. Do not look outside at 1. His curiosity battled his fear. Finally, curiosity won. Very carefully, he pulled the curtain aside. The street below appeared empty. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then something moved. Far down the road, a giant silhouette crossed between buildings. Francis froze. The thing was impossibly tall, at least 20 feet, maybe more. Its body appeared thin and unnatural. Its arms stretched almost to the ground. And its head looked wrong, twisted, bent sideways, like a broken mannequin. The creature walked slowly through town, searching, watching, listening. Francis could not breathe. The monster stopped, then turned. Directly toward the motel. Even from that distance, Francis felt its attention. Its head tilted higher. Slowly, very slowly, until it seemed to stare directly into his room. The creature began moving closer. Thump, thump, thump. Every step shook the ground. Francis dropped behind the bed. His entire body trembled. The footsteps grew louder, closer, closer, closer. Then they stopped, directly outside. Silence filled the room, a terrible silence. Francis squeezed his eyes shut. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Then came a new sound, a voice, right outside the window. Soft, almost human. Francis. The voice whispered his name. Francis, come outside. Francis felt ice spread through his chest. He had never told anyone his name, not since arriving. The voice continued. Francis, we found your place. Francis remained perfectly still. The whisper lasted several minutes. Eventually it faded. Silence returned. At some point exhaustion overcame terror. He fell asleep on the floor. When morning arrived, sunlight filled the room. Birds sang outside, cars moved through town. Everything seemed normal again. For a moment, Francis wondered whether the night had been a dream. Then he looked toward the window. The message remained. Do not look outside at 1. His blood ran cold. It had been real. The moment he stepped outside, he stopped walking. Every building around him had changed. The grocery store was gone. Different houses stood where others had been. Roads curved in new directions. Even the town square appeared farther away. Nothing matched his photographs. Nothing. Residents walked calmly through the streets, as if this were completely normal. Francis grabbed his camera. He compared yesterday's images with the town around him. The differences were undeniable. Black Hollow had changed overnight. Exactly as the truck driver had claimed. Exactly as the motel owner had warned. And then Francis noticed something even worse. Near the center of town stood the faceless statue. The endless list of names still covered its base. But now a new name appeared at the very bottom. A name that had not been there yesterday. Francis. Beneath it was a date. Tomorrow. Francis stared at the stone monument. His name remained carved into the surface. Fresh. Deep. Impossible. The date beneath it showed tomorrow. Not next year. Not next month. Tomorrow. For several moments he could not move. People walked past the statue without reacting. Nobody seemed surprised. Nobody even looked at the new name, as if they already knew it would appear. Francis approached an elderly man standing nearby. Excuse me. The man slowly turned. Francis pointed toward the carving. My name was not there yesterday. The old man glanced at it. Then his face lost all color. Without saying a word, he hurried away. Francis tried speaking to others. Each reaction was the same. Fear, then silence. Nobody answered his questions. Nobody explained anything. Eventually, he found the young woman from the previous night. She stood outside a small bakery. When she saw him approaching, she looked worried. You found it, she said. Francis nodded. Tell me what is happening. The woman looked around nervously. Not here. Come with me. She led him through narrow streets until they reached an abandoned church near the edge of town. The building appeared ancient. Dust covered everything. Broken stained glass scattered across the floor. The woman finally stopped. My name is Evelyn, she said. Francis sat on an old wooden bench. Now tell me the truth. Evelyn remained silent for several seconds. Then she spoke. Every morning, Black Hollow changes. Not just the buildings, the people too. Sometimes families disappear. Sometimes new people appear. Sometimes entire neighborhoods are replaced. Nobody remembers how the town looked before, except a few of us. Francis listened carefully. How long has this been happening? Nobody knows. Longer than anyone can remember. Francis shook his head. That makes no sense. Evelyn laughed bitterly. Nothing here makes sense. Francis showed her the photograph from yesterday. The town square, the missing buildings, the changed roads. Evelyn examined the image. Then she looked frightened. You should leave immediately. I tried. The roads lead back here. Francis frowned. What? Every road, every highway, every path through the forest, they all returned to Black Hollow. Francis remembered the woman's earlier warning. Nobody can leave. At the time he thought she was exaggerating. Now he was not so sure. Evelyn sat beside him. There is something else. Something worse. Francis waited. Every person whose name appears on the statue disappears when the date arrives. Nobody knows where they go. Nobody ever comes back. A chill ran through him. Disappear, you mean die? We do not know. Maybe something worse. The church suddenly creaked. Both turned toward the sound. The building was empty, yet footsteps echoed from somewhere above. Slow footsteps, heavy footsteps. Evelyn immediately stood. "We need to go. Now." Her fear looked genuine. "To town." Throughout the day, Francis continued taking photographs. He documented every street, every building, every sign. If the town changed again overnight, he wanted proof. By afternoon, he noticed another disturbing detail. Some residents seemed different from earlier. Not simply because he forgot their faces, actually different. A woman he photographed that morning now had different hair, different clothes, even a different voice. Others appeared to have vanished completely. The entire town felt unstable, like reality itself was constantly shifting. As evening approached, Francis returned to the motel. The elderly owner waited behind the desk. "You saw your name," she said. It was not a question. "How did you know?" she sighed. "Because it happens every time." "What happens every time?" "Someone arrives. The statue chooses them. Then they disappear." Francis leaned against the counter. "Who chooses?" he asked. The old woman stared toward the window. "The thing that walks at one." The words sent a cold wave through him. "You have seen it. Everyone has. Nobody survives seeing it twice." Francis remembered the giant figure from the previous night, its twisted head, its impossible height, the way it seemed to notice him. "What is it?" The woman shook her head. "Nobody knows. People have given it many names. The Walker, the Tall One, the Hollow King, but names do not matter. It always comes, and it always takes someone." The motel owner handed him a small notebook. "Take this." Francis opened it. The pages contained names, hundreds of names. Every one matched a carving from the monument. "Who wrote this?" "My husband, before he disappeared." Francis quickly flipped through the pages. Each name included notes, dates, locations, strange observations. Then he found something shocking. Several victims had written messages before vanishing. The final message repeated again and again. "It wakes up when we sleep." Francis looked up. "What does that mean?" the old woman whispered. "Nobody knows." Night arrived sooner than expected. Dark clouds gathered above town. Rain began falling heavily. Thunder rolled across the sky. Inside room 7, Francis studied the notebook. One entry caught his attention. A victim from 20 years earlier had claimed to discover tunnels beneath Black Hollow. Tunnels older than the town itself. According to the notes, something lived below, something ancient, something connected to the nightly changes. Before the victim could investigate further, he disappeared. Francis checked the clock. 11:30. He still had time. Without hesitation, he grabbed his flashlight and camera, then left the motel. Rain soaked the streets. Most residents remained indoors. The town felt abandoned. Following directions from the notebook, Francis reached an old maintenance building near the forest edge. The structure appeared unused. Rust covered the doors. Weeds grew through cracks in the concrete. Inside, he found a staircase descending underground. Cold air flowed upward, carrying a strange odor. The smell reminded him of wet soil and decay. Francis turned on his flashlight, then began descending. The staircase seemed endless. Down, 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 down. Finally, he reached the bottom. A tunnel stretched ahead. Its walls were made from ancient stone, not modern construction. Something much older. Symbols covered the surfaces. Thousands of strange markings. None resembled any language Francis recognized. The deeper he walked, the colder the air became. Soon he noticed something strange. The tunnel walls were covered with photographs. Hundreds of them. Thousands, perhaps. Pictures of people, children, adults, elderly residents. Every photograph looked old. Many were decades old. Others appeared recent. Francis examined one closely. The person shown had a familiar face. It took several seconds before realization struck. The photograph showed the truck driver who told him about Black Hollow. A date appeared beneath the image. 3 years ago. Francis felt his stomach tighten. The driver had vanished here, just like everyone else. Then his flashlight illuminated another photograph. His own face stared back at him. The picture had clearly been taken yesterday, yet Francis had never seen it before. A date sat beneath it. Tomorrow. His heartbeat accelerated. Someone had taken his photograph. Someone had already placed it here, and somehow they knew the date. A distant noise echoed through the tunnel, a scraping sound, like stone dragging across stone. Francis turned off the flashlight. Darkness swallowed everything. The sound continued. Closer, closer, closer. Something moved through the tunnel ahead. A silhouette emerged. Tall, unnaturally tall. Francis froze. The figure slowly approached, its limbs bent in impossible directions. Its movements resembled a broken puppet. The same creature from the street. The walker. The tall one. The Hollow King. Whatever it was, it had found him. Francis backed away silently. The creature continued forward. Its twisted head slowly rotated, searching, listening. The darkness concealed him for several seconds. Then the creature stopped. Its head tilted sharply, directly toward his hiding place. Francis realized it knew. The thing smiled. At least he thought it smiled. A long split opened across its face, far wider than any human mouth. Then it spoke. Francis. The voice sounded wrong, like hundreds of voices speaking together. Tomorrow belongs to us. The tunnel suddenly shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Instinct took over. Francis turned and ran. Behind him, the creature moved, fast, far faster than before. The sound of its footsteps echoed through the darkness. Francis sprinted through the tunnel. His lungs burned. His legs screamed with exhaustion. Yet the footsteps kept gaining. Closer, closer, closer. The staircase finally appeared ahead. Francis raced upward, 2 steps at a time. Behind him came a terrible scream. Not human, not animal, something far worse. He burst through the maintenance building and slammed the door shut. For several seconds he leaned against it, panting, listening. Nothing followed him. The creature remained below, at least for now. Rain continued falling as Francis hurried back toward town. Lightning illuminated the streets. For a brief moment, he looked toward the monument in the square and nearly stopped breathing. The faceless statue was no longer faceless. A face had appeared. His face. Francis stared in horror. The stone eyes looked identical to his own. The same nose, the same mouth, the same expression, as though the monument was slowly becoming him, or he was becoming it. Then the town bell rang. One time. Midnight. Not 1 o'clock. Midnight. Every resident immediately closed their curtains. Doors slammed shut. Lights switched off. Fear spread through the town. Francis realized something. Whatever happened at 1 o'clock, tonight would be different, because the bell had never rung at midnight before. And somewhere beneath Black Hollow, the creature had already spoken its promise, that tomorrow belongs to us. Francis stood alone, in the rain. The statue stared back at him with his own face. Lightning flashed across the sky. For a fraction of a second, the stone features seemed alive. Then darkness returned. Francis backed away slowly. His pulse hammered inside his chest. Nothing about Black Hollow followed normal rules anymore. The changing streets, the disappearing residents, the underground tunnels, the creature beneath the town. And now the monument itself was changing. Somehow, it was connected to him. The rain intensified. Thunder rolled through the mountains surrounding Black Hollow. Francis hurried back to the motel. The streets were completely empty. No cars, no pedestrians, no sounds except rain striking the pavement. It felt as if the entire town was hiding, waiting, watching. When he reached Hollow Pines Motel, he found the elderly owner standing outside beneath the covered entrance. She looked terrified. "You went underground." Francis stopped. "How do you know?" because nobody who goes there comes back after dark. Her eyes moved toward the town square. Did you see it? Francis nodded. The statue changed. The old woman closed her eyes. Then there is very little time left. Francis followed her inside. The motel lobby was darker than usual. Several candles burned on a table. Their flames flickered nervously, as though reacting to something unseen. The old woman led him into a storage room behind the office. Inside were dozens of dusty boxes. She opened one and removed several journals. My husband collected these before he disappeared. Francis took the journals. Most were old. Some appeared nearly a century old. Every journal belonged to a different resident of Black Hollow. Every writer eventually vanished. The final pages contained similar warnings. It learns your face. It learns your voice. It learns your memories. One journal ended with a single sentence. When the statue becomes you completely, it is already too late. Francis felt cold. What happens then? The woman shook her head. Nobody knows. Nobody lives long enough to tell us. A loud crash suddenly echoed outside. The motel windows rattled violently. Both turned toward the sound. Another crash followed, this time closer. Then another. Francis rushed to the window. Outside, several residents were running through the streets. They looked terrified. A man screamed in the distance. Someone shouted for help. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The old woman grabbed his arm. Do not go outside. Why? Because it has never started this early before. Another scream echoed through town. Then silence. A horrible silence. Francis looked toward the clock. 12:20. Almost 40 minutes before the creature normally appeared. Whatever was happening, the rules were changing. And changing rules in Black Hollow never meant anything good. For the next half hour, the town remained unnaturally quiet. Francis sat in his room, reading the journals. One account described an event from decades earlier. According to the writer, there had once been another outsider, a man named Samuel. His name appeared on the statue, just like Francis. Samuel investigated the tunnels. He discovered a hidden chamber deep beneath Black Hollow. Inside stood hundreds of stone figures. Every figure looked exactly like a missing resident. The journal ended before Samuel could reveal more. Francis checked the time. 12:58. 2 minutes until 1. Fear settled over him. He remembered the warning on the window. Do not look outside at 1. Last night he ignored that warning. Tonight, he was not sure what would happen. The town bell suddenly rang. One time, a deep sound that echoed across Black Hollow. 1 o'clock. Instantly, every light disappeared. The entire town plunged into darkness. Francis remained motionless, listening, waiting. Then came the footsteps. Thump, thump, thump. The same massive footsteps from the previous night. Except this time there was more than one set. Thump, thump, thump. Another set joined them. Then another, then another. The sound became deafening, like giants walking through the streets. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Francis slowly moved toward the window. Every instinct told him not to, yet curiosity remained stronger than fear. Very carefully he pulled back the curtain, and immediately wished he had not. The street below was filled with creatures. Not one, hundreds. Tall, twisted figures wandered through Black Hollow. Their limbs bent unnaturally, their faces stretched into impossible shapes. Some crawled along rooftops. Others walked upside down across buildings. A few stood perfectly still, staring into windows, searching, waiting. Francis could barely breathe. The creatures filled every street, every alley, every corner of town. Then he noticed something even worse. Among them walked people, ordinary people, residents of Black Hollow, the missing residents, the vanished townspeople. They moved slowly beside the creatures, their faces blank, their eyes empty, as if something had hollowed them out. Francis recognized several faces from the photographs underground. People who disappeared years ago, people who should have been dead. Yet here they were, walking beside the monsters. A sudden knock sounded behind him. Francis nearly jumped. 3 slow knocks, from inside the room, not outside. His blood froze. The sound came from the closet. Knock, knock. Francis stared at the door. The closet was small, barely large enough for clothes. Nobody should have been inside. Knock, knock. Then a voice emerged, soft, almost identical to his own. Francis, open the door. Every muscle in his body locked. The voice sounded exactly like him, not similar, exact. Francis, let me out. I have been trapped in here for a very long time. The closet handle slowly began turning. Francis backed away. The handle continued moving, once, twice, 3 times, then stopped. For several seconds nothing happened. Silence returned. Suddenly the entire door exploded outward. Wood fragments flew across the room. Francis stumbled backward. The closet stood open. Empty. Completely empty. Nothing inside. No person, no creature, no explanation. Then the motel lights flickered back on. The town bell rang again. The footsteps vanished. Everything became silent. Francis looked at the clock. 1 o'clock had lasted only 5 minutes. But those 5 minutes felt like hours. The next morning, he woke to shouting outside. Residents filled the streets. Many looked frightened. Others looked confused. Francis rushed outside and immediately realized why. The town had changed again. But this time, the transformation was far greater. Entire neighborhoods had disappeared. Buildings were gone. Roads ended abruptly in forests. The church where he met Evelyn no longer existed. In its place stood an empty field. Francis found Evelyn near the square. She looked exhausted. "Did you see them?" she asked. Francis nodded. There were hundreds. Evelyn looked terrified. Usually there is only one. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Francis noticed something. The statue had changed again. His face now looked even more realistic. The stone skin seemed almost alive. The resemblance was perfect. But that was not the worst part. A second name had appeared beneath his own. Evelyn. The date beneath her name was also tomorrow. Evelyn saw it. Her face turned pale. No, 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 no. This cannot be happening. Francis grabbed her shoulder. What does it mean? Nobody has ever shared the same date before. Never. A sudden voice interrupted them. You finally found each other. Both turned. An elderly man stood nearby. Francis had never seen him before. Yet something about him felt familiar. His eyes were completely black. No white, no color, only darkness. The old man smiled. The Hollow King has been waiting a very long time. Francis stepped back. Who are you? The man's smile widened. Someone who escaped. The answer shocked both of them. Escaped. Nobody escaped Black Hollow. That was impossible. The old man pointed toward the distant forest. There is only one way out. And tonight, the path opens. For the first time in 70 years. Evelyn stared at him. Why are you telling us this? Because if you fail, the town will wake up everywhere. The old man's words hung in the air. Francis felt a chill crawl down his spine. What does that mean? The stranger looked toward the horizon. It means Black Hollow was never a town. It was a cage. And tonight, the thing inside that cage is finally strong enough to leave. The old man turned and walked away. Within seconds, he vanished into the crowd, gone as if he had never existed. Francis and Evelyn stood frozen. Neither spoke, because both understood the same terrifying truth. Tomorrow was no longer the greatest danger. Tonight was. And somewhere beneath Black Hollow, the Hollow King was waking up. The words of the old man followed Francis for the rest of the day. Black Hollow was never a town. It was a cage. The idea sounded impossible. Yet everything Francis had witnessed pointed towards something far worse than a haunted town. A prison, a trap, a place built to contain something ancient, something that should never be free. Dark clouds gathered over Black Hollow once again. The sky seemed lower than before, almost as if the town itself was sinking beneath an invisible weight. Francis and Evelyn spent the afternoon searching through abandoned buildings. Most had changed overnight. Entire streets no longer matched the photographs Francis had taken only days earlier. The deeper they searched, the more evidence they found that Black Hollow had existed for much longer than anyone realized. Inside an old library that had appeared that morning, they discovered newspapers dating back hundreds of years. The strangest part was that every newspaper described the same town, the same disappearances, the same faceless statue, the same creature walking the streets at 1 in the morning. One article caught Francis's attention. The paper was yellow with age. According to the date, it had been printed more than 200 years earlier. The headline was simple: "The gate remains closed." Beneath the headline was a sketch. Francis immediately recognized it: the Hollow King. The drawing showed a towering figure surrounded by hundreds of smaller creatures. The article claimed a secret group had built Black Hollow over an ancient opening beneath the earth. Something had emerged from that opening long ago, something capable of changing reality itself. Unable to destroy it, the group trapped it. Then they built the town above the prison. Generation after generation guarded the seal, until eventually everyone forgot the truth. Everyone except the creature. The Hollow King remembered, was waking up. Francis closed the newspaper. His hands trembled. Evelyn sat beside him. There has to be a way to stop it. Francis nodded. The answer is underground. Everything leads back to those tunnels. As evening approached, they returned to the maintenance building near the forest. The entrance remained open. Cold air drifted upward from the darkness below. This time neither hesitated. They descended together. The deeper they traveled, the stranger the tunnels became. The walls no longer resembled stone. Instead, they looked organic, like enormous bones buried beneath the earth. Ancient symbols covered every surface. Some glowed faintly in the darkness. Others seemed to move when viewed from the corner of the eye. Hours passed. The tunnels twisted endlessly. At times, Francis felt as if they were walking through something alive. Eventually, they reached a massive chamber. Both stopped immediately. The sight before them was unbelievable. Hundreds of stone statues filled the cavern. Every statue depicted a human being. Men, women, children. Thousands of faces stared silently into the darkness. Some looked terrified. Others looked frozen mid-scream. Francis slowly approached one. The resemblance was perfect. Too perfect. The statue looked less like stone and more like a person transformed into rock. Evelyn pointed toward another figure. That one disappeared 15 years ago. Francis looked closer. The face matched a photograph from the tunnel. Every missing resident was here. Every victim taken by the Hollow King. The realization sent fear through him. These people had never left. They had become part of the prison. Then Francis noticed two empty pedestals near the center of the chamber. One bore his name. The other bore Evelyn's. Tomorrow, the same date carved into the monument. The Hollow King already had a place waiting for them. A low vibration suddenly echoed through the cavern. The ground shook. Dust rained from above. Then came a sound. A heartbeat. Slow, massive, ancient. Boom, boom. The entire chamber pulsed with each beat. Evelyn stepped backward. Something is beneath us. The floor cracked. A jagged line spread across the stone. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the center of the cavern collapsed. A vast abyss opened below. Darkness stretched endlessly downward. Francis aimed his flashlight into the opening. The beam vanished before reaching the bottom. Then something moved. A gigantic eye slowly opened within the darkness. The eye alone was larger than a house. Its pupil narrowed, fixing directly on Francis. The heartbeat became louder. Boom, boom. The Hollow King was not merely beneath Black Hollow, it was Black Hollow. The town had been built on its sleeping body. The realization nearly broke Francis's mind. Everything suddenly made sense. The changing streets, the shifting buildings, the disappearing residents. The creature beneath the town was altering reality through dreams. Black Hollow transformed because the Hollow King dreamed different dreams every night. And now it was waking up. A deafening roar exploded from the abyss. The chamber shook violently. Statues toppled, stone shattered, then closed again. The ground continued trembling. Francis grabbed Evelyn. "We need to leave now." They ran. Behind them, the cavern collapsed. Stone pillars crashed into darkness. Ancient walls shattered. The prison was breaking apart. As they raced through the tunnels, something else happened. Voices emerged from every direction. Thousands of voices. The voices of missing residents. The voices trapped inside the statues. "Help us. Do not let it wake. Close the gate. Save the town." The whispers followed them through the darkness. Eventually they burst out of the maintenance building. Night had fallen. Black Hollow looked completely different. Buildings flickered in and out of existence. Roads shifted before their eyes. Entire blocks appeared and vanished. Reality itself was collapsing. The town bell began ringing. Not once, not twice, continuously. The sound echoed through the night, like a warning. Residents flooded the streets. Many screamed, others ran blindly. Some simply stared at the sky. Above them, enormous cracks had appeared among the clouds. Beyond those cracks, Francis glimpsed something impossible. Another world. A dark, endless landscape, filled with towering shadows. The Hollow King's world. And the cracks were growing larger. Evelyn pointed toward the town square. The statue. Francis turned. The monument was changing again. Its stone surface cracked apart. Pieces fell away, revealing flesh beneath. The statue was alive, and it now looked exactly like Francis. Not almost, exactly, slowly, deliberately. Then it smiled. The same smile Francis saw on the creature in the tunnel. The living statue stepped off its pedestal. People screamed. The ground shook, and from every street emerged hundreds of twisted creatures. The same monsters Francis saw during the night. Only now they were fully awake. The living statue raised one hand. Instantly every creature became silent. Then it spoke. Its voice echoed across the entire town. "Tomorrow begins tonight." The cracks in the sky widened. The earth trembled harder. Buildings collapsed. Trees bent sideways. Reality itself seemed ready to tear apart. Francis understood the truth. There would be no tomorrow unless the Hollow King was stopped. And somewhere within the chaos, the final path mentioned by the mysterious old man was beginning to open. A narrow trail of pale light appeared at the edge of the forest. The only escape. The only chance. Francis and Evelyn stared at it because they knew what came next. To stop the Hollow King, they would have to enter the prison itself and face the thing that had been dreaming Black Hollow into existence for centuries. The final night had begun. The sky was breaking apart. Huge cracks stretched across the darkness above Black Hollow. Beyond those fractures, Francis could see another reality. A dead world without stars, without sunlight, without life. An endless wasteland covered in shadows. The Hollow King's world. Every second the cracks grew larger. Every second the two worlds moved closer together. Buildings collapsed throughout town. Roads twisted like living snakes. Trees uprooted themselves and crawled across the ground on roots that resembled giant fingers. Residents ran in terror. Some vanished in flashes of darkness. Others were swallowed by cracks opening beneath their feet. Black Hollow was dying. Or perhaps it was being born into something worse. Francis and Evelyn stood at the edge of the forest. Before them stretched the narrow trail of pale light. The path the old man had mentioned. The only way to reach the heart of the prison. The only way to stop the Hollow King. Behind them the living statue watched silently. It still wore Francis's face. Its smile never changed. Its eyes never blinked. Hundreds of twisted creatures surrounded it, waiting, watching, as if they already knew how this would end. The town bell continued ringing, over and over, without stopping, a warning to a world that could not hear it. Francis looked at Evelyn. Ready? No, she answered honestly, but we have no choice. Together they stepped onto the glowing path. The moment they did, everything vanished. The town disappeared. The forest disappeared. Even the sky disappeared. Only darkness remained. An endless ocean of darkness. Suspended in nothingness. Far ahead something enormous waited. A shape larger than mountains. Larger than cities. Larger than imagination itself. At first Francis could not understand what he was seeing. Then realization hit him. The Hollow King. Its sleeping body stretched beyond the horizon. Entire forests grew across its skin. Mountains rose from its back. Rivers flowed through cracks in its flesh. Black Hollow had never been built above the creature. Black Hollow had been built on the creature. The town was nothing more than a tiny mark on the body of an ancient godlike nightmare. A deep voice echoed through the darkness. "Welcome home, Francis." The voice came from everywhere. From the ground, from the sky, from inside his own thoughts. Francis felt pain shoot through his head. Images flooded his mind. Thousands of memories. None of them belonged to him. He saw ancient civilizations, lost kingdoms, forgotten wars, entire worlds destroyed, all consumed by the Hollow King. The creature had existed long before humanity, long before Earth itself. It traveled between realities, feeding on fear, feeding on minds, feeding on dreams, until one day something trapped it, something powerful enough to imprison even a being like this. Black Hollow became its cage, and for centuries it slept, dreaming. Its dreams became streets, its dreams became houses, its dreams became people. Every morning the town changed because the dream changed. Every missing resident became another part of that dream, another prisoner inside its mind. The Hollow King laughed, a sound like collapsing worlds. "Soon the cage will open. Soon I will dream again, and every world will become mine." The enormous eye opened, the same eye Francis saw beneath the cavern, only now he understood its true size. The pupil alone stretched across miles. The eye focused directly on him. Then something impossible happened. Francis saw himself reflected inside it. Not his current self, another Francis, an older Francis, one with gray hair, a tired face, and black eyes. The reflection smiled. Suddenly Francis remembered, not learned, remembered he had been here before. Many times, hundreds of times, perhaps thousands. Every cycle ended the same way. Someone arrived in Black Hollow. Someone discovered the truth. Someone reached the prison. Someone failed. Then the dream reset. The town changed. The memories vanished, and the cycle began again. Francis fell to his knees. The realization shattered him. This was not the first time. It was merely the latest. The Hollow King spoke again. "You always return. You always fail. You are part of the cage." Evelyn suddenly grabbed his arm. "Francis, look." Ahead of them stood thousands of figures. The missing residents, every victim ever taken by Black Hollow. Men, women, children, generations of lost souls. They stood silently in the darkness, watching, waiting. Then one stepped forward, the truck driver, the same man who first told Francis about the town. His eyes were no longer empty. Neither were the eyes of the others. They had awakened. The truck driver smiled sadly. "We remember now." Others stepped forward. Thousands of voices joined together. You must break the dream, not the prison, the dream. Francis understood. The prison was never the problem. The dream was. The Hollow King remained powerful because it continued dreaming. As long as the dream existed, the creature could eventually escape. The dream had to end, even if that meant destroying Black Hollow forever. The Hollow King sensed his realization. Its roar shook reality. No. For the first time, fear appeared in its voice. The giant eye widened. The darkness trembled. The trapped souls moved forward. Thousands of them, then millions. Every victim across every cycle. Every prisoner trapped within the dream. They surrounded Francis. Their memories flowed into him. Their strength flowed into him. Their hope flowed into him. The Hollow King attacked. The darkness surged forward like a tidal wave. Mountains shattered. The bridge collapsed. Entire pieces of reality broke apart. But the trapped souls held firm. For centuries they had been prisoners. Now they fought back. Francis stepped toward the gigantic eye. The creature screamed. Reality twisted around him. Nightmares appeared. Monsters, shadows, worlds burning in darkness. Yet he continued walking. Closer, 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 until he stood directly before the eye. The Hollow King stared at him. It looked afraid. Francis raised his hand, then placed it against the giant pupil. The dream ends now. Light exploded across the darkness. The trapped souls released a deafening cry. The Hollow King screamed, a scream filled with rage, fear, and despair. Cracks spread across the enormous eye, then across the creature itself. The body shattered like glass. Mountains collapsed. Rivers vanished. The darkness fractured into countless pieces. The dream was dying. The Hollow King made one final attempt, one final desperate plea. If I die, the town dies too. Francis nodded. I know. The creature screamed one last time, then exploded into light. Silence followed. Complete silence. For several moments, nothing existed. Then the darkness began fading. The trapped souls smiled. One by one, they disappeared, free at last. The truck driver vanished. The missing residents vanished. Generations of prisoners vanished. Finally, only Francis and Evelyn remained. The dream was ending. Black Hollow was ending. Evelyn looked at him. What happens now? Francis smiled. For the first time since arriving. I think we wake up. The light consumed everything. When Francis opened his eyes again, he was lying beside a highway. Morning sunlight warmed his face. Birds sang in nearby trees. Cars passed in the distance. For several minutes he simply stared at the sky. Then he sat up. Evelyn sat nearby, alive, real. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Slowly they stood. Across the road stood an old wooden sign, weathered by age, almost unreadable. Francis approached it. Only a few letters remained visible. Black Hollow. Below the town name, someone had carved a final message. A message that had not been there before. The dream is over. Francis smiled, then turned away. Together he and Evelyn walked down the highway, leaving the sign behind, leaving the nightmare behind, leaving Black Hollow behind forever. As the wind moved through the trees, the old sign finally collapsed. The wood broke apart, the name disappeared, and for the first time in centuries, no town woke up that morning.